They thought he was just another stray, until one cold morning, a volunteer followed him, and what she found left her in tears. Every single day, at the same time, a small puppy would walk up to the gates of the local animal shelter. He never barked, never whined, just sat there quietly, looking through the bars, as if he was waiting for someone. Staff noticed him. Volunteers tried offering food, but no matter what, he never stepped inside. He would sit, wait, and then walk away, day after day, rain or shine. At first, it was just a mystery, but when one kind-hearted volunteer decided to follow him, the heartbreaking truth about this little dog's past was finally revealed. This isn't just a story about a dog. It's a story about love, loss, and the kind of loyalty that animals never let go of, even when it hurts. The shelter was used strays. That was what they were there for. Dogs abandoned by owners, cats left in boxes, animals discarded when people moved away or simply didn't care anymore. For years, the shelter had been a place where these lost souls found refuge, at least until they could be rehomed or, in some cases, until they learned to trust again. It was a routine for the volunteers. They knew what to expect. After all, they had seen it all. But there was something different about this one. He didn't come looking for food. He wasn't injured. He didn't beg or bark or wag his tail at the staff. He didn't even acknowledge their presence. He just sat there, silent, waiting. A small, tan-colored puppy with big ears and eyes that, for someone so young, looked far too tired, too wise. He wore the expression of a dog that had seen more than he should have, more than any pup should ever experience. The first day he showed up, the staff thought he was lost, just another confused stray looking for shelter. It wasn't uncommon for dogs to wander to the gates of the shelter, hoping for a safe place or food. But this dog, he didn't seem lost at all. His posture was too calm, too resigned. It was like he knew exactly where he was and why he was there. A volunteer named Clara saw him and decided to try to coax him inside. She walked over with a small bowl of kibble and gently called to him, "Hey there, little one. Are you hungry?" The puppy blinked slowly, but didn't move. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, Clara felt a strange sense of connection, a silent understanding. But then, he simply turned away, disinterested. He didn't scurry off like most stray dogs would when faced with an opportunity for food. Instead, he just sat back down. Clara didn't know what to make of it. She wasn't sure if she should be worried or impressed. After about 20 minutes, the puppy stood up, turned his back to her, and started walking down the road. That was the first time. It happened again the next day, and then the next. Every morning, like clockwork, around 9:30 a.m., the tan puppy would show up at the shelter. He would walk up to the same spot by the fence, stop, and just sit there, quietly, still, as though waiting for something or someone. The staff didn't know what to think. At first, they figured he was just another stray with a weird habit. Maybe he was dumped nearby and had somehow found his way back to the shelter. Dogs did weird things sometimes. But Clara, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. Something about this dog, his stillness, his patience, the way he seemed to look right through the fence, made her think he was waiting for something. Someone. She couldn't help herself. She had to find out. "I don't know what it is," she told another volunteer, Sarah. "It's like he's waiting for someone. Maybe someone dropped him off here. I just feel like there's a reason he's here, not just wandering around." Sarah shrugged and laughed it off. "Dogs are weird, Clara. Maybe he's just got a routine. They all do something strange. Just wait a bit, and he'll probably find his way somewhere else." But Clara wasn't convinced. Every time she saw him, sitting silently, she felt a pang in her chest. There was something about this puppy's quiet presence that felt too deliberate, too intentional. One Sunday morning, as Clara walked into the shelter for her shift, she saw the puppy again. The tan pup was sitting in his usual spot, right by the fence, just sitting there, watching the world go by, unmoving. The clock on the shelter's wall ticked closer to 10 a.m., and as usual, when the hour hit, he got up and walked away, just like he had done every other day. But today, Clara couldn't just let it go. She made a decision that would change everything. She would follow him. Clara grabbed her jacket, stepped out of the shelter, and kept her distance as she watched the puppy start his slow walk down the road. She kept far enough behind him so he wouldn't notice her, but close enough to keep him in sight. The quiet was almost eerie, broken only by the sound of the leaves rustling in the trees and the soft crunch of gravel under Clara's shoes. The puppy didn't look back. He walked with purpose, as if he knew exactly where he was going. Clara's heart beat faster as she trailed him through the quiet streets. She didn't know why, but something told her that this was important, that this dog was trying to tell her something. She had to know what it was. They crossed a small footbridge, and the puppy didn't hesitate for a second. He moved with such focus, his body language calm yet determined. Clara followed as they made their way deeper into the town, and then, just as she thought he might keep walking past the familiar streets, the puppy stopped. Clara froze. What she saw made her heart drop. There, in front of her, was an old house. The roof was sagging, and the paint had chipped off long ago. The yard was overgrown with weeds, giving it a neglected, forgotten look. It seemed abandoned, the kind of place you'd see on a street that no one walked down anymore. But the puppy acted like it was home. He walked up to the gate and sat down. His body relaxed, but his eyes were fixed on the door, unblinking, waiting. Clara stood there for a moment, stunned. What was this place? Why had he come here? It didn't make sense. She hesitated for only a second before walking closer. She moved slowly, cautiously, trying to take in every detail of the scene. The mailbox was rusted, barely hanging on its post. She could see the outline of something inside, the faint glimmer of light through the cracks in the windows. But nothing could prepare her for what she found next. As she took a few more steps, Clara's eyes were drawn to something half buried under the weeds by the gate. A dog leash. Old, torn, weathered. Her stomach tightened. She bent down, heart pounding, and pulled it out of the weeds. The metal was rusted, and the fabric of the leash was frayed at the edges. But it was the name written on the side that made Clara's breath catch in her throat. Buddy. The name was barely legible, but it was there. Buddy. Clara felt her chest tighten. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. What was this? Why was this puppy waiting here? She looked around for any sign of life. The house looked empty, but something felt so wrong, so haunting. It was as if the puppy knew something Clara couldn't quite piece together. Her heart raced as she walked closer to the door. She knocked softly. No answer. She called out, "Hello? Is anyone home?" There was silence for a long moment, and then, just as Clara was about to turn away, she heard it. A faint voice, raspy and weak, coming from inside the house. "Buddy, is that you, boy?" Clara froze. She moved to the side of the house and cautiously peered through a cracked window. What she saw made her heart ache. An elderly man was sitting in a recliner, his body frail and thin. His eyes were clouded with age, his face a map of wrinkles. He was alone, talking to himself, as though waiting for something or someone. That's when it all started to make sense. The puppy wasn't waiting for just anyone. He was waiting for Buddy. Clara stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest as the realization hit her like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just some random stray. This was a dog, waiting for its owner, an owner who was clearly no longer able to care for him. The puppy, the one Clara had named Shadow, wasn't wandering aimlessly. He had a purpose. He had been coming to the shelter every day not for food or shelter, but because he was waiting for someone to remember him, and that someone was now trapped inside this old, crumbling house. Clara felt her heart twist at the thought. She'd seen the elderly man through the cracked window, hunched in his chair, staring at the door like he was waiting for something that would never come. His voice, thin and frail, barely above a whisper, had called out for Buddy. The name Clara now realized was the puppy's. Buddy had belonged to him. Clara's mind raced. She knew what she had to do, but she was terrified. What if it was too late? What if the man was too far gone, too sick to remember the puppy he had loved? What if Shadow had been waiting here every day, for years, with no one to open the door and let him back in? Without thinking, Clara moved closer to the window, her eyes desperately scanning the inside of the house. The old man didn't seem to notice her peering in. He was lost in his own world, talking to himself, as if waiting for the familiar sound of his dog's paws against the floor. She couldn't bear it any longer. Clara walked around the house to the front door and knocked again, harder this time, her hands trembling. There was a long pause, and Clara's mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Would anyone answer? Would anyone care? And then, the door creaked open, slowly, painfully. A man stood there, frail and hunched, his face a patchwork of wrinkles. His eyes were dim, but there was a spark of recognition when he saw Clara, standing there with the puppy at her side. "Can I help you, miss?" His voice was soft, but Clara could hear the weariness in it. I'm sorry to bother you," Clara began, her voice faltering, "but I think your dog, Buddy, is waiting for you." The old man blinked in confusion. "Buddy?" He looked down at the puppy standing beside Clara, his eyes clouded with uncertainty. "Buddy, is that you?" The puppy, Shadow, wagged his tail faintly, as if recognizing the voice, though he didn't move. He just sat there, looking up at the man with those same wise eyes. The old man reached out with shaking hands, his fingers brushing the puppy's fur, but it was clear that there was something wrong. His movements were slow and unsteady. It was as if he hadn't touched his dog in ages. "Buddy," the old man whispered again, his voice barely audible. "Is that really you?" Clara stepped forward, trying to steady herself. I think he's been coming here every day, waiting for you." The old man's eyes began to well up with tears. He took a shaky step back and placed his hand on the doorframe, as if the weight of the world had just fallen on his shoulders. "I'm sorry," he muttered, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." Clara stood there, unsure of what to say. She could see the pain in the old man's face, the regret, the guilt. The puppy, Shadow, had been coming to the house every day, waiting for a man who had either forgotten or been unable to care for him. Clara couldn't tell which. All she knew was that there was a bond between them, a bond that hadn't been severed by time or neglect. The old man shuffled back inside, slowly, still looking at the puppy, who hadn't moved an inch. "You can come in if you like," the old man said softly, his voice trembling. "It's been a long time since I've had company." Clara hesitated. She wasn't sure what the right thing to do was, but the puppy, Buddy, had already made the choice. He had come to the door. He had found his way back. Clara stepped into the dim, dusty house, her heart heavy with the weight of the moment. She could see the faded remnants of a life once lived, family photos on the walls, a couch that had seen better days, and an old dog bed in the corner, worn from years of use. But it was empty now. "I didn't know." The old man's voice trailed off as he sank into the recliner again. "I didn't know what to do. I couldn't care for him anymore. My daughter tried to take him, but I wouldn't let her. He's all I had left." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, trying to keep the tears from falling. Clara sat down beside him, her heart breaking as she watched the old man struggle with his emotions. "You don't have to be sorry," Clara said quietly. "You did the best you could. And Buddy, he's here now. He's not going anywhere. You don't have to be alone anymore." The old man looked down at the puppy, who had finally moved and was now resting his head in the man's lap, as though nothing had ever changed, as though they had never been apart. Tears streamed down the old man's face as he stroked Buddy's fur, his shaking hand moving with love and regret. "I'm sorry, boy. I'm so sorry," he whispered, over and over. Clara watched as the man and the dog shared a moment of pure, unspoken understanding. The world outside didn't matter in that instant. All that mattered was that Buddy had come back to his owner. And then, Clara felt a hand on her shoulder. "You did something good," the old man said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you." Clara gave him a small, sad smile. "I didn't do much. I just followed the dog." One rainy afternoon, just a couple weeks after the reunion, Clara dropped by Harold's house again. She brought Buddy a new chew toy and a fresh bag of treats. As usual, the old man was sitting in his recliner, eyes brighter than they'd been in months, and Buddy was curled at his feet, tail wagging lazily with every breath. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful, but something felt different. "Hey, Harold," Clara said as she stepped inside. "How are you two doing today?" Harold smiled but didn't speak. He just looked down at Buddy and stroked his head softly. Clara placed the treats on the kitchen table, chatting away like she usually did, but halfway through her sentence, she noticed something. Harold hadn't moved. Harold, still nothing. She took a step closer, heart starting to race. Harold, he was breathing, but his head had slumped to the side. His hand was still resting on Buddy, unmoving. Clara rushed to his side and gently shook his shoulder. "Harold, can you hear me?" No response. She grabbed her phone and dialed emergency services. With trembling hands, Buddy stood up, sensing the fear in her voice. He let out a low, concerned whimper, nudging Harold's leg. The paramedics arrived fast. Clara stood in the corner, arms wrapped around herself as the room filled with quiet urgency. They carefully moved Harold onto a stretcher, checking vitals, monitoring signs. "He's had another stroke," one of them said. "This one could be serious." As they wheeled him out, Buddy followed, refusing to leave Harold's side. The paramedics hesitated. One of them looked at Clara. "He's clearly attached," the man said. "Can you take care of the dog?" Before Clara could respond, Buddy did something none of them expected. He leapt into the ambulance. Not aggressively, not wildly. He just climbed in and lay down beside Harold's feet, like he'd done for years, as if to say, "If he's going, I'm going too." The paramedics looked at each other and shrugged. "Let him stay." At the hospital, hours passed like days. Harold was stable, but unresponsive. Buddy sat beside the hospital bed, without moving. He didn't bark, didn't whine. He just lay there, ears back, eyes locked on Harold's face. Nurses tried to move him once, just to clean the room. He growled softly, Not out of anger, out of fear. He was afraid Harold would leave again. Clara came by every day. She brought food for Buddy, updated Harold's chart, spoke to the doctors. It was like she'd become their family. One day, after a long shift at the shelter, she sat beside the bed, her hand resting on Harold's arm. "Harold," she said softly, "he's still waiting, just like before. He hasn't left your side." Her voice cracked. "I know you probably can't hear me, but if you can, just squeeze my hand." Nothing. Silence. The monitor beeped steadily. Buddy rested his head on Harold's chest. And then something happened. Harold's fingers twitched. Just slightly, but enough. Clara gasped. "Harold." The nurse rushed in. "We saw it on the monitor. He's responding." Buddy stood up and wagged his tail slowly. Hope returned like the morning sun after a storm. Weeks passed. Harold didn't make a full recovery, but he was awake, speaking again, laughing even. With therapy and help from Clara, he got strong enough to sit on the porch once more. And beside him, always, Buddy, rain or shine, cold or warm, side by side, like nothing had ever broken between them. But the most unforgettable moment wasn't the ambulance, or the hospital, or even the reunion. It came on one quiet morning. Clara had just arrived. She brought Harold some breakfast, and Buddy was chewing on a bone in the corner. Harold reached into a small wooden box and pulled out something old, worn, but full of love. A photograph. It was him, years younger, holding a tiny puppy in his arms, ears too big for his head, for messy, eyes full of curiosity. "He was just 3 weeks old when I found him," Harold whispered. "I never thought a dog could become my whole world." Clara took the photo gently, her eyes filled with tears. "And you were his," she said. "Still are." Harold smiled, his eyes glassy but proud. "You know what's funny?" he said. "After my stroke, when I was alone in that hospital room, I thought I saw him. I thought it was just a dream, but it wasn't." He looked at Buddy, who was now lying at his feet again. "He came back for me. He never gave up." Clara knelt down, hugging Buddy tightly. "You saved him," she whispered, "and he saved you right back." Sometimes, the most powerful love stories don't happen between people. They happen in silence, in loyalty, in soft tail wags and long waits under the rain, in a stray puppy who refuses to give up, even when the world seems to have forgotten him. Buddy's story isn't just about a dog waiting outside a shelter. It's about everything we hope for in this world. It's about how love never dies, even when it's lost, even when it's taken, even when the world says it's over. He waited every single day, not for food or shelter, but for family, for his person. And when everyone else saw just another stray, Clara saw something more, a soul searching for home, a silent cry for help that no one else had bothered to hear. And when she followed him that day, when she saw him sitting outside that broken house, staring at the door that hadn't opened in months, she didn't just find a dog. She uncovered a bond so pure, so heartbreakingly loyal, that it changed everything. In that moment, it wasn't just about rescuing a puppy. It was about rescuing the man he never stopped waiting for. And maybe that's what love really is. Waiting without question, trusting without reason, showing up every single day, even when no one notices. Because animals like Buddy, they don't keep score. They don't give up when things get hard. They don't ask for anything but love. And in return, they give you their entire world. Harold may have lost a lot that year, his health, his strength, even his memory for a while. But what he never lost was Buddy. And when he needed him the most, when the world turned quiet and the days stretched long and lonely, Buddy came back. Not because someone told him to, not because someone fed him or trained him, but because he remembered. Because deep in his heart, that bond had never been broken. Even after being abandoned, even after hunger, rain, and months of silence, even when every instinct told him to move on, he waited, he stayed. Because sometimes, love looks like a dog sitting by a door that never opens, hoping, believing, loving anyway. And Clara, she didn't just change a dog's life. She didn't just help an old man. She listened when no one else did. When the world kept walking, she stopped. She followed the story that no one else saw. The silent story written in muddy paw prints and quiet eyes. And because of that, 2 souls were reunited. 2 lives were saved. It's easy to overlook the strays. It's easy to scroll past the photos online, to ignore the dogs on the corner, to assume they'll be fine. But behind every stray, there's a story. Sometimes it's sad. Sometimes it's beautiful. Sometimes it's both. So the next time you see a dog waiting in the rain, or a pair of eyes that follow you from the shadows, remember Buddy, remember Harold, and remember that even when words fail, even when the world turns away, love finds a way. Because sometimes, The most loyal hearts walk on four legs, and they never, ever forget you. They may be small, but their love is enormous, and when they choose you, it's for life. If Buddy's story touched your heart, hit subscribe for more stories that stay with you.